right, we are up. Our Town Podcast. And I believe this is going to be episode 67.
Okay.
I don't know what your favorite... You have a favorite number, Joey?
67 will work.
That'll work?
Yeah.
It's like a 67 Chevy.
Yeah.
I think of muscle cars, right? When you think...
I was born in 68, so hey.
There you go. Man, that was a good time to be alive.
Yeah,
and
it's
or born.
been an interesting time to be around, that's for sure. So.
Yeah. So I was just telling you, the company I work for, Mantech, our founder, I think they founded it in 1968. Mm-hmm. He just died a couple days ago. He's 87 years old, George Peterson. And but I tell people, and I think I mentioned this in the last episode, like 1969, and I'm sure that was like, obviously the man on the moon, but in the space race was kind of, nearing the conclusion. That was an awesome year. Like just so much happened. So many companies were born in that year. If you go look back at the defense industrial base and a lot of other ones, it's like, man.
Well, it was a lot of technology that was developed, for space and for other applications.
Yeah.
Obviously, with a huge amount of funding in the 60s. And then you started seeing guys kind of either take those technologies to the next step, and then also start to take those technologies and apply them in other non-space and defense related ways. So.
Yeah. What I guess I don't know is, and I don't know if you have any insight into this, did the contracting, if you will, change or just kind of allow for more suppliers to kind of enter the picture? I wonder if any of the rules changed from an acquisition standpoint in the government.
Probably did. I mean, of course, when the early days of the space race, it was so, for speed, you sacrifice a lot of things. But after several years, then you start to look at other goals. How do we encourage minority business? How do we encourage small business? How do we, get other people involved? But early on, you just threw as much money as you could at the big boys and said, get going. But, once that panic phase passes, you have some opportunities to do some different things.
It's weird. Like, I think you're just a little bit older than I am, but and it's interesting to think, like, in a few years, people won't even remember to be able to talk about 1968 or 1969, right? We're just like, man, we're getting too old.
Yeah, well, my kids, look at me like I'm crazy when I talk about that. So I had to explain to one of them what calling the operator was on the phone.
Right.
So he's like, what do you mean? You hit zero and it does what?
Yeah. Did you, when you were growing up, did you just dial 4 numbers ever? Like wherever you lived, to dial down the street or across town?
No, by the time I was making phone calls, I guess it was a 7-digit number.
Yeah. And then later it changed to 10.
Exactly. When they first started saying you have to put the area, I mean, it was like the world was going to end.
Right.
Oh my God, are you crazy?
You want me to do what?
What? We're never going to remember that. So.
Yeah, my wife's from a really small town in Illinois, and it blew my mind when she told me, even to like when we got married in like the late 90s, they would just dial 4 numbers because there's only 800 people in the town.
Yeah.
I guess, like, why? Maybe it's changed now. They may have like forced them to do it. Yeah. But like, I was like, that would have been a dream.
Well, I have to imagine, especially if you're going on the computer now, you've got to have some kind of standardized number to put in, or nobody in that town is going to get anything from Amazon either. Or, so.
Let's do this before we begin officially. Let me do a plug for TPG. Are you familiar with TPG by chance?
No, don't think so.
They're down in West Side Square. Their main office is in Omaha. Lisa DeFalco, she's the founder, CEO of TPG, and I would encourage people listening, and I would even, Joe, if you want to check out episode 60, it's a great episode. She comes out of Newark, New Jersey.
Okay.
She's 4'10", in her words. She told me that. But single mother, and invents the industry of quality assurance. So when you call anywhere now and it says your call may be monitored, she invented the phrase. She invented the industry.
Wow. And
so here we are 26 years later, and I'm going to just pull up her website real quick because they've created an AI engine. There's like some 15 million calls that come into like a particular call center or the ones that they have customers with every month. So you have a huge infrastructure. Where do you store all this data? Well, and then it used to just be humans, right, that were listening to these. Well, now that you can record them, well, what do you do with 15 million calls? Well, you have an engine like Anna, which is their AI-based platform. And they have 307. She wrote, like, there's 307 attributes that make up a good call when it comes into a call center. And that's what they train the operators on just different things. And what comes out of that is the sentiment of the customer, right? And did the agent do well in resolving the concern? Was the concern ever brought forward? That type of thing. So this AI engine, of course, is in helping to handle massive amounts of data,
right,
and still be able to produce the same quality as if it was a human listening in. So big shout out to Lisa DeFalco and her team at TPG for their sponsorship. We appreciate
one of those amazing local stories of
Yeah.
nobody knows a company like that is there, what their story is. That's great.
Yeah, their traditional business is still in Omaha, Nebraska, and then they came here because of the number of engineers in the Rocket City, and they knew they wanted to create an AI platform. So this is kind of their second headquarters.
Perfect.
Yeah. So Joey Ceci, your primary job was with Breland Homes.
It is, well, Breland Companies.
Breland Companies.
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, you know what? I guess it depends on what you reference on the internet, right? Where
Right.
it may have been under the
Well,
old
of course, there's
brand.
there's Breland Homes, which was the home building side,
Right.
and then of course Breland Companies is more of the land development side. So I work on the of course the Town Madison and the Clift projects,
Right.
Which Breland Homes has built some homes there, but overall it's more of a Breland Companies because it's a larger than just the home building. So
And then Lennar bought Breland Companies.
Breland Homes,
Breland
they bought
Homes.
the home building business
Okay.
of Lewis's. Yes.
Okay. So I met you through Joe Denoto, and it's funny. It's been a while since he gave me a huge list after I interviewed Clayton Hinchman, who you know,
Right.
early on. So this is episode 67. That was like episode 16.
Okay.
So it's been about almost a year. And so I meet Clayton, and Joe and company are kind of sitting in here. And then afterwards, he sends me this whole list of people to interview.
Yeah.
You're one of them.
Oh, okay.
And it's
Well,
just, it's taken a
very
while
kind, yeah. So
to get there. You know, you're a busy guy. But at the same time, I'm actually going to interview Mayor Battle soon.
yeah. Okay.
And I'm glad that I didn't interview Mayor Battle last year, because I feel like I'm still only 18 months that I've been here. And with every episode, I learn a little more.
Right.
Right. As if catching up for lost time, having not grown up in the Greater Huntsville area and learning the history or learning the people and,
Right.
you know, some of who are the real movers and shakers or people that really provide value, you know, in the town. What are those nonprofits
Sure.
that are making a huge difference? And so, and I look at this podcast as everything just builds, right? And we're just telling this one long story of North Alabama.
Yeah.
And I've interviewed John Allen from the Committee of 100, and I've interviewed most of the Launch 2035 people that was born out of the Committee of 100, right? And have a better understanding of what the tar cogs are and the Singing River Trail and the desires to bring a zoo here or any other capital projects, right?
Yeah.
I've interviewed people from the Pandas, Chad Emerson, both downtown Huntsville and now the Huntsville City Football Club.
Right.
And Freak Daddy from the Havoc. So now I feel like, okay, now I can have a better conversation with somebody like you.
Right.
Because you are involved in many things, let alone, you know, the head of the committee, the transition committee for Congressman Strong. And same thing with Mayor Battle. I feel like I know a few more things then that I can talk to him about that were either, you know, initiatives that he founded or who the other people were, you know, rather than just, you know, going in cold episode 3.
What do you do? Yeah.
What do you do, sir? Yeah. So if you could, why don't we start with Breland Companies? And, you know, there's some, you've been interviewed a few times. I found it interesting. There was an article where they were, I think it was, oh shoot, I think I have it here actually. It's the Event Magazine. Let me just show you. This is Lewis is standing here.
Oh,
Lewis
yeah.
Breland, right? Your founder.
Yep.
And I guess they're basically, the basic premise, I won't read it right now, is, hey, he'll talk to you about a bunch of things, but then when it comes to basically his true philanthropic side,
Right.
and all the great things you know, I'm sure he's very humble.
Sure.
And it's hard for him to pound his chest and say, I've done this and I've done that. So they basically say, well, that's when we turn to Joey.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
say, hey, Joey, can you tell us more about, you know, Lewis Breland?
Right.
But can you give a you know, an in-depth, you mentioned Cliff Farm, you mentioned Town Madison,
Right.
the Breland Companies, and if that's the scope of kind of what you're doing, cool, then maybe kind of dive into some of the newer developments of that.
Okay.
Because I'm sure that, you know, to be current and cut. I'm sure it's changing all the time.
It is, yeah.
You know, what's in, what's out. But yeah, I mean, kind of, if you could just give us a good primer of your role in Breland Companies and some of the cool things that are going on right now.
Well, Breland Companies, if you look at it, is essentially, I guess it comes down to land development, buying raw land and developing it, turning it into something else. And we do that for a variety of different uses. One is develop it into lots and communities that you then go either build the houses and the homes on the lots, which we used to do as Breland homes. So we would develop the subdivision, you put in all the utilities, you put in the amenities,
Right.
and then somebody comes and builds the homes. So you can either sell the lots to other builders or you can build on them yourself. So obviously after we sold Breland Homes, now we do that, but then just provide the lots or sell them to other builders.
Right.
So there's that kind of a land development. Then you've got land development that we also do that is self-storage. Safe Mini that you see around the community. We've got 11 locations in Alabama and southern Mississippi. That's a Breland company. That's something that Lewis has always been in that business as well, of the self-storage business. So we're kind of building it for that specific purpose. And then we own and operate those.
Safe Mini is the brand
Mini
name?
storage. Yeah, self-storage. Okay. And then the third is kind of, again, developing it for different kind of commercial uses, or what we now all call, a mixed-use community.
Yeah.
So that's really where Clift, Farm, and Town Madison come in. Is they are probably two of the most high-profile mixed-use developments, really in the Southeast. Both of them very different, but both of them over 500 acres plus of a kind of a master planned community. That's kind of everybody throws out the term live, work, play, but you try to get as many of those elements as you can in there to kind of create kind of your own community. When you've got 500 acres, you've got an opportunity to do that, and to bring some different things in there, and to have different kind of users. And then it's always very interesting how you try to get those to marry up with each other and to kind of complement and such, when you're going from commercial to office to medical to retail and then residential. And then residential, you've got, of course, apartments, you've got townhouses, you've got patio homes, you've got more single family detached larger homes. So making all those things kind of work together. So it really is a kind of a puzzle. So that's kind of in a nutshell what Breland Companies does.
Yeah.
And in my role is kind of assisting across all of those in kind of a jack of all trades. Again, my background really comes out of kind of strategic communications, governmental relations. So I'm kind of the government interface, which you have a lot of. I mean, you've got planning commissions, you've got councils to deal with, you've got multiple utilities that you have to deal with. Most of those have boards. So there's a lot of interaction with kind of local governments that has to be done. And then in the case of the Town Madison project, there was getting the approval for the new interstate interchange and kind of getting that under construction, which was a whole different ball of government interaction you had to do, and something I'll never do again, because it was probably the most frustrating experience I've ever had.
And it's somewhat phased, it seems, right?
It is phased.
Just looking at those on and off ramps.
Absolutely.
Two phases, right?
Yeah, two different phases. So the final phase is, of course, under construction now, but extremely difficult dealing with the Federal Highway Administration. If you think your local planning commission is difficult, go deal with those guys, okay? Because they don't do anything quickly. So,
right.
But that's essentially kind of what I do, and of course a lot of the community relations. I spend a lot of time at HOAs, meeting with our neighbors, helping get our own HOAs established. And so really just kind of across several different, of parts of the development that I work in.
Yeah. So let's start with, with Cliff Farm. Let's put that one aside for a minute. And I want to talk about Town Madison.
Right.
Because certainly I know that the anchor, the flagship is Toyota Field.
Right.
And a lot of cool things are starting to develop now. And to your knowledge, who's that first person that should get credit, the visionary for Town Madison, whether it was the stadium, whether it was just mixed use? Who had that first idea?
Well, yeah, it really does come back to Lewis Breland.
Okay.
Lewis developed a lot of what you see south of 565 in that Zert Road corridor.
Okay.
One of his first developments that he started building homes in when he moved here in the 80s was in Edgewater.
Okay.
His office used to be well, his office, he's had two different offices kind of right in that same area, either on Zert Road or on kind of Madison Boulevard, kind of right across from where the stadium is. So, and his home actually today is down Zert Road. So this was always a large piece of land that was kept intact and had no development on it. It was owned by a man named Jim Medlock.
Okay.
Jim Medlock was one of the founders of the Intergraph Corporation, which is now Hexagon out there. Mm-hmm. And when they developed that Hexagon campus, he bought all of the rest of that land, kind of from Zert Road all the way over to Wall Triana, and he kind of kept that, and that was his land, and he just never really got around to developing it. So over the years, of course, Lewis would see this large piece of land and would talk to Jim about buying it at some point, and finally Jim, got to the point where he decided he was kind of moving to the beach. He, I believe, has a large kind of a convention center hotel at the beach. I think he's also got a winery in Napa. So he had some, some other interests that kind of took him away. And so Lewis bought that land and always looked at it and said, this is such a great location that it can be something different. That, obviously he develops hundreds of communities and, neighborhoods and, single family residential. And he could have done that, across this 500 acres and made a lot of money, to be quite honest. Probably saved himself a lot of time and headache of trying to get an interchange and all the things that are there now. But he always, saw this as something that there could be something special. And then the evolution from that really mirrors what you've seen in the changes in our society and how we live and the internet and commercial over the last 20 years. Because the first site plan for let's do this mixed use, well, there was just you put all the residential back here in the back, and up here we're going to put this huge power center, and we're going to have a Macy's on one end and a Bass Pro on the other, and a bunch of stores and restaurants between the two of them, half of which have gone bankrupt, since that time. And that was the way development was done.
Right.
The internet changed commercial completely. A lot of those names that, again, are, they're not doing any more Macy's. Macy's is just trying to figure out how they exist in this kind of a thing. So that changed completely. And then you did start to see what you call mixed use. So Lewis has always been one of these guys that wants to go see what's the cutting edge. And so he spent a lot of time going to visit different kind of the mixed use communities. One of the ones that was really pulled us together earliest over in Georgia was Avalon, north of Atlanta.
Okay.
And again, it had a large kind of corporate presence, very nice, well planned out commercial and restaurant, and then residential. But they're all kind of mixed in together. It's not you're over here and you're over here. And the whole idea is it was a way to kind of replace the traditional commercial model. The commercial model before was you needed, a bunch of people come to your anchor stores. And when they were at the anchors, they would also visit some of the other stores. Your residential and your office kind of became your anchors. So that's what put the people on the project. So they would explain it. They're like, look, during the day, it's a bunch of people from the office that come out and they eat lunch and they buy things, or they'll go to the store on the way home. And then in the evenings, all the residential folks come in, and then they're there kind of for dinner. Yeah. And the guys that are driving past that come, exit and come in are kind of what is the profit. But their anchor is kind of the activity it generates from within the project. So we pretty quickly decided to do something like that here, and then brought in Andres Dewani, who is a land planner, what they call New Urbanist Movement, and kind of again talking about London and some other places that have been around for a few hundred years. It's how do you develop something that can change and adapt over time and a little bit be timeless, and that's really kind of the design that was developed for Town Madison. But it also always had that, what's going to be that anchor? What's the anchor? Office is kind of a difficult animal in Huntsville just because of the way Research Park is, and that's really where companies want to be. Right. So it's hard to kind of say, okay, let's go build a big office building and have that as an anchor. So, so baseball, when they kind of came to town for the first time and were interested in doing a stadium, and I think I met with them probably on their first trip to Huntsville because they were looking for a location.
This was the Angels?
Well, it was
Or-
the ownership group that that at that time was in the middle of purchasing the Mobile Bay Bears,
Oh, right.
the minor league team in Mobile, and they were going to move them.
Gotcha.
And they were going to looking at Madison, they were looking at Baton Rouge, and they were looking at maybe I think it was Savannah or maybe North Augusta, so somewhere over in Georgia, and those were kind of the areas that they were interested in. But they got to Madison, and in talking to them, their vision for how they wanted to run the stadium and run the team was very different than what we'd heard in the past for a sports venue. And it was, how do you make the stadium facility kind of a part of the community?
Yeah.
How do you do other, what they call non-baseball events?
Sure.
So you look at it, minor league baseball is only going to be 70 days out of the year. Yeah. So if you're a retailer or a restaurant, you say, well, okay, what about the other 270 days? What do you got for me? So, but they do so much other things there with movie nights, with of course the 4th of July, the Christmas lights.
They still had Ricky Fernandez on my very first episode, and he talked about at one point during COVID they had to sell chicken.
Yeah,
he's like, we were selling chicken out of the parking lot,
and
they did 167 non-baseball events just to.
But the non-baseball events were always part of their business plan, not selling chicken.
Right.
But and they didn't want to be the only part of their business plan, which they were forced to do.
Right.
But again, it was always to build a club room that you could do proms and weddings and other things. And again, they do a Kentucky Derby party. They've got a wine and beer festival. They had 600 scouts spending the night on the field the other night. So just those things that appealed to us because it wasn't something that was kind of just off by itself, that was kind of inaccessible, and it brought people to the project a lot, more so than just during baseball. So that really kind of helped energize the retailers, the restaurants. They want to be around that, which then kind of just is what's starting to make that a successful, very unique project. So
it's we moved here Christmas Eve of 2021, and I had been here a few times. One time in September, once in November, and then once in early December. But I hadn't driven by Toyota Field at night,
right?
And they hadn't started like their Christmas light thing. And so when we move in, I think I came in at like 2 a.m, and I don't know if that's the case. But sometime that week, we drive by. I knew it was Toyota Field,
sure.
But I drive by at night. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then, so they have the Christmas light thing, and then they have the fair, the big old fair, stuff like that. Yeah. Like, all right, this is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, and again, draws thousands of people, and that's really what you want. So it was they really always had that different business model. And it's also different than, what we had with the Huntsville Stars at Joe Davis Stadium. That again, it was just kind of almost closed off to people, that was kind of inaccessible. Most stadiums now today.
Yeah.
They want the public to come in and do things. They want you. They want to do yoga in the outfield. I mean, they want to, get your fitness classes to come in and use, parts of it. So, so that's really, part of the little bit of a change in attitude of, again, if the public is going to invest in these venues, we want to get as much use out of it as we can.
So it was somewhat of a surprise to you when that management group approached you.
It was, of course, something like that's always a surprise. We actually had talked to a different baseball ownership group a few years before, but their vision was completely different than these guys. And when you talk to them, they really weren't kind of event people, baseball folks. They were just kind of other real estate guys. It was, hey, we can build this and we can put a bunch of apartments around it, and it'll make some good money. But there really wasn't that, how do you energize the commercial? How do you bring more people to the project? That kind of a thing. It wasn't the same vision.
Yeah.
So the fact that they, while we were kind of coming up with what are we going to have there for an anchor, because again, the traditional anchors just don't exist anymore in retail. Yeah. The big, again, the department stores, things like that, they're just not building anymore of those. So when you started to get, we're looking for an anchor, and then this guy sits down and he says, hey, this is what we want to do. And it was modeled a little bit after a team called the Tin Caps in Indiana. And he showed a presentation of, I think they did 400,000 people in non-baseball events, over and above what the attendance was for baseball. And I said, well, this is a horse of a different color. This is something, again, that really can become an anchor and is going to attract, the commercial and the restaurant uses that are not only that we want, but that the city of Madison wants and the people of Madison to be able to have some things there that we haven't had in our community before.
Yeah. That's interesting. When I was just talking to Chad, I don't know, whenever, just recently.
Right.
And he was talking, I was asking him that, okay, he gets this job last summer as the managing director, and there's a press conference where they basically say, hey, we're going to bring, well, actually, it was the press conference of like 2018. And I think Mayor Battle says, we're going to redo Joe Davis Stadium, and we're hoping to bring soccer.
Right.
Right. Which is, and also it'll be mixed use as far as high school football,
right.
and we'll have other leagues and
right.
schools be able to use the field, which is kind of interesting because then it's like, okay, well then so Lewis has this idea of well, he's a developer, and there's just all this land, and maybe thank goodness these guys come along.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're looking for that, right? Like
you
guys have ideas.
The right, again, you have those things that are just kind of the right time, right place, kind of opportunities, and that really was what was it.
Yeah.
It was right time, right place. Things fell into place, fairly quickly, and people kind of rallied, thought it was a good idea. It took a little while to put the deal together, but I do think that we ended up putting together the best deal that any community has with minor league baseball.
Yeah.
Both to make the project work today and to keep it working and to prevent the Huntsville Stars, to prevent the Mobile Bay Bears. We went and looked at why has this failed other places after time, and what do we need to do to make sure that it can't do the same here? Yeah. And all of those are kind of built into the deal. So it really was kind of a great, opportunity. But and I'll tell you the other thing too is that has changed over time is the attitude of residents and people toward a stadium. It used to be that, Joe Davis was built kind of away from everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of the old airport, and we had some land there, and nothing was around it, so you weren't going to bother anybody. Now people want to live by the ballpark. They want to, look out their window and see that. Yeah. They want to have offices and be able to see the ballpark. It's interesting. It's different. It's nice. They want that activity. They want the noise. It's not that same, keep it away from everything and wall it off. It really becomes, again, I just moved over there in December.
Did you?
Myself, and man, I love it. I actually picked the side of the building for my condo unit to be the one that's facing the stadium. I said, well, I'm going to live here. I want to see the fireworks, So,
do you think some of that's just as? I think this is one of the pluses. Everyone, I mean, we all buy into Huntsville pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Many of us have transplanted from other places, and we bring kind of the lessons learned,
right.
Or, if I ever get the chance to live somewhere else, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna get involved, and maybe that's just other people bringing those experiences. I know you're a Yankees fan,
right?
And people are Braves fans. Anywhere where you're in a major league market, and some of all these new stadiums,
right?
I'm assuming are surrounded by mixed use.
Yeah. Well, again, Atlanta's a perfect example, and we looked a lot at the Battery because it had just kind of been done before we embarked on the baseball experience, and we went several times and looked at how to do it, and in some ways we're still working on it, replicating that experience there at Toyota Field, but. If you remember where the stadium was before, close to downtown, again, it was in this middle of this sea of parking. Nothing was around it. Nothing was close to it. And again, that was just the way you did stadiums. Was you went somewhere, we had a huge piece of land, and you want to keep it away from things, and people just didn't want to be around it. Completely different with the Battery. I mean, they've got, again, offices overlooking they've got, some of the highest rent apartments in the Atlanta region, right there outside, of course, and just all kinds of retail and others. So, it's just a different mindset of how people want to live today. One of the other things you see here, because you do have people kind of coming from all over, and you've also got population growth and it's, whenever you're in business, you want to do whatever you're doing, whatever product you're selling, you want to have the widest variety of people out there that want it as you can get.
Yep.
But what you're starting to see here is it isn't one size fits all, and you don't have to appeal to everyone. Okay,
Right.
not everyone wants to live across the street from a ball field. Okay, which is fine, but we've got enough people now that do to make it successful. They're happy. The people that don't want to live across from the field, they can go whenever they want. So, but it's not the it used to be in the past. It was hard to maybe make some things work that had a small niche because there wasn't enough of a niche. But now as we got more people into town and more of a population, everything doesn't have to be appeal to everybody.
Well, there's that, and the reality is, as much as people may be like, why are there so many apartments going up? Well, guess what? The younger generation, they don't want to own homes.
Right.
They don't want to take care of a yard. They don't even want to cook their own food.
Yeah.
They want to, or everything is just convenience, right? So that's, what are you going to do?
Well, that was one of the
questions. If you're a developer, you got to keep up with that.
Right. And one of the questions we asked at one point over in the Battery was, I think the average apartment size over there was like 700 square feet or 600 square feet. And I said, oh my gosh, it's tiny. And the rent is, they said, it almost acts as your bedroom because you're going to go eat in the restaurants. You're going to hang out at the coffee shop. You're going to go into the park. You're going to go to these green spaces. So it's not like, I need to have everything I need right here in my, four walls of my home that I'm going to want. It's the whole idea of living in a project like that is that you're going to be out and going to these other things, you know? So, I live kind of in the good and the bad. I live kind of right behind that, the parking lot there that's got Sazas and Moe's and
milkshake bar.
Yeah. So, and it happened last night, so everybody knows you live there. All your friends know. So throw over at Sazas and they're having a glass of wine. Hey, come on over. We know you're over there. We see your light on, So, okay.
We know you're over there.
Yeah. But it really does almost become a little bit like your front porch, I mean, okay, I'll come over, So it really becomes a kind of a part of what your home is. It's a different experience.
I was at the game last night, and I know you guys have a suite.
Yeah.
And I looked, and I was like, "Wonder if Joey's in there. If he's in there, I'm gonna go say hi to him."
Yeah, not last night. Yeah.
How often do you go to the games?
Yeah, I go a lot, especially since I've moved over there. I mean, most nights, if I don't have something going on, I'll go over and go to the games. I just love baseball. I just love the experience.
Yeah.
But so I go quite a bit. So.
Real quick, I know that you posted something on Facebook, and when I was talking to Chad, I just keep going back because the soccer thing is very exciting,
right?
And the thing I talked about with him is, in Huntsville, again, it's we want live sports,
right.
We want live entertainment, and you had posted something. How awesome is it that 5 years ago somebody would say there's nothing to do in Huntsville? Well, the Orion was sold out, the Joe Davis Stadium was sold out,
right.
And the Pandas, if they don't sell out, it's pretty dang close.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
a weekend, right?
Pretty much, it's as close as you're going to get to a sellout.
And I'm sure even if the Havoc were playing,
right,
it probably would have been sold out.
Yeah.
Because now you're servicing different markets.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too. We have enough population here for everybody. And when I said that about there's nothing to do here, that actually came out of a report. Okay?
Oh, sure.
The city of Madison wanted to kind of do a study to show, yes, the business case works for the stadium. Mm-hmm. And so they hired a group that's what they do, come in and evaluate, yes, it works and here's why. And part of their evaluation, number one, everybody has to remember, they look at a catchment area of like 50 miles around Huntsville, Madison. Any place you can get there and like reasonably travel in 20, 25 minutes that's now Huntsville. That's kind of Greater Huntsville. All of those people come here to go to concerts. They come here to go to trash bandits, to events, to restaurants. So you go and look at the tags in the parking lot at Toyota Field, and it's from all over North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. So it's not just us too.
Yeah.
When we say Huntsville, or of course we still mean Madison and Madison County, but it's even beyond that. So
sure.
So one, they loved that how many people can get here in that time frame. But the other thing they were talking about when they said about the whether or not to be successful, they said, one of the other things that's going to drive the success of this stadium is there's nothing to do here. They said, we have never been in a community with the population and the income and the education level of this community with less things to do. And I mean, and you just kind of stopped and thought, and they're right. It was like, well, you got top golf, and every once in a while you got some events going on, and you've got, of course, restaurants, but there wasn't. I mean, there's that kind of a thing. So, as much as we kind of would beat ourselves up, when you really started to think about it, there really wasn't all that much to do. So, there was no natural competitor. Even like we went and saw the team up in Columbia in their new stadium, minor league baseball. Well, they've also got the University of South Carolina baseball team there that draws several 100,000 fans a year that kind of competes with them somewhat. But yeah, that was kind of really directly out of that guy's report. And again, 5 years later, you do have Orion, which is fantastic. You've got of course, Joe Davis Stadium, and again with that, community folks and business leaders and such. Well, but how's it going to work when you've got all of these?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the answer is it's going to work really well.
Yeah.
Okay, the only again, the general manager Garrett Farman at Trash Pandas, he said, the only thing that worries me about Orion and the soccer stadium is when we have an event on the same night, are we going to be able to find enough bartenders? Okay, so that's
that's true.
It's more of just finding people to work than it is people to fill the seats. And it's just proven, I think, again, the vitality of this community. And it's been pointed out to me since that post that the Limestone County Rodeo was sold out, huge crowd. There was a big crowd downtown for the food truck rally. There was the concerts at the dock in Low Mill. And again, it's one of those things where you don't have to get everybody to come. You just need to get enough to come to make what you're doing successful. And we have enough of a community and a region now of people looking for those things to do. So I think it's very complimentary.
It's been fun to, even going back like 10 years, downtown Huntsville, they went and looked at other cities.
Yeah.
How do other downtowns do that? And they've implemented that. RCP worked on Mid-City and they had the music audit.
Right.
That Mayor Battle sponsored. Mm-hmm. And that led to the Orion and other things, not just the Orion, but just in general, how do you bring more music and arts to the Rocket City?
One of the unique things about this community, and I've been involved in either through government or business or, politics, my whole life here, that you just don't find other places, is that self-examination of, okay, what is it we're missing? Okay. Mm-hmm. Which a lot of other places do too, but then okay, let's do something about it, and we know it's not going to be a quick fix, but we're going to start today, and eventually you're going to see a result. I mean, 15 years ago, one of the big things was young professionals. We don't have enough young professionals here. People graduating out of college, the good talent, they all want to go other places. They don't want to come here. We need them, the engineers, the talent base and such. But we just weren't competitive with them because of different, quality of life issues and things to do, places to live that are different than the traditional subdivision, And so we actually started as a community working to be more attractive, that, really energize Huntsville young professionals. I started a kickball league and those kind of things. Of course, then you saw downtown Huntsville and the way that it kind of changed. And then, pretty quickly, then, not too long after that, Campus 805 came and really supporting the growth of a craft brewing, culture here that has provided all kinds of opportunities and fun places to go. And then eventually, again, that leads to, investments at Orion, at Toyota Field, and at Joe Davis. And when you're doing those investments as a community and as a government, one of the things that comes up is this a good idea? We always came back to, this is going to help us be competitive as a city, because this is going to help us to recruit those people that you want to have here. It's going to help everybody that lives here by improving their quality of life. So it's truly a win-win. But my 3 kids just graduated from Alabama about a month ago.
Congrats.
They all left to go to college, and I said something about, well, this is probably the last time you guys will live in Huntsville. And they all 3 said, no, if I can get a job in Huntsville, that's where I want to come back. Completely different than the people I graduated with. I mean, everybody couldn't wait to get out of town and never come back. Right. So it really has kind of become that place to live, and we're just, to be honest, we're just kind of keep getting better. But I mean, you brought up the music audit. Mm-hmm. What other community kind of looks at something and says, hey, why aren't we good at this? And then comes up with okay, how do we go do this? And we're going to invest money in it, and we're going to get many people from different parts of the community. And it ain't going to be overnight, but let me tell you what, my bet is 5 years from now, 6 years from now, people are going to be coming here to say, wow, how do we develop a music scene like Huntsville has? You know, so that it just, we've always been patient as a community, but we've always had that self-examination and then that ability to pull the community together to work towards what a solution is. And that's what really is kind of unique about Huntsville.
And you know what's interesting? we haven't even talked about the #1 tourist destination, the Space and Rocket Center.
That's right. Yeah.
So there, case in point, we're talking about all these other things,
Right.
And that's still, it's still going to draw its numbers,
Exactly. Yeah.
And that might be, that's all year, that's awesome, but all those people that come, well, then the byproduct of that, and maybe that's something you've briefed, as you go and sell to those, hey, you need to come in and do business here,
right?
You need to come build here. Has that been somewhat of a selling point?
Of course,
we have some percentage of people who have never been to Huntsville. They come here, they go to the Space and Rocket Center, they do space camp, and then it's like their eyes are opened.
Exactly.
Just as mine were when I came here 12 years ago and I played Hampton Cove. On the trail. I was like, wow.
Well, again, the tourists and the people that the Robert Trent Jones course brings to the state is amazing. But I think we benefit from it more than any other community because there's kind of more to do here and people want to come live here. But yeah, that's absolutely part of it. It was interesting when I worked at the county and we brought Remington arms to Madison County. And so then Chairman Dale Strong and I went to Elizabethtown, Kentucky. They had a small facility there with a lot of engineers that was kind of their design team, about 100, 150 people. And so we went to meet with them to kind of sell the community. Okay, so I go loaded up with all the good statistics of stuff from the Chamber of Commerce, and let me tell you this, and let me tell you that, and their eyes are kind of glazing over a little bit. Okay, and the things that they responded to were, the kayak trail, okay, and the Flint River and the greenways, and the one guy sits there and he says, I've been there. He says, there's a place called Napoleon's Nook, and they have 100 craft beers on tap, and everybody kind of turned, So, I mean, those are the things that people are looking for. Is again that quality of life. What am I going to do after 5 o'clock? What's there for my kids to do, but also me. What's there? I mean, if you're an engineer and can do any one of a dozen technical things, you can go almost anywhere in the country and get a job. So why do you come here? In the past, it was always, it's a great place to raise a family. Well, okay, what else you got, And I remember a guy back in the early 90s, actually, when we were talking about the Huntsville Young Professionals, and he said, stop talking about young professionals. He said, go out to California, get all those guys that, just got married, and they've got a couple kids, and their commute is an hour and a half, and their tax bill is this, and they'd love to come to Huntsville, but we want both, So we did something that, one, not only brings young professionals, but two, I'm a father of three. I was, president of the Booster Club for 4 years, and I did all that stuff. But then you want to go do stuff too, So it's really, again, it's something that helps everybody here that's already here improve the quality of life, and then it just makes our community that much more marketable to the people that we want to come live here. So it's really, again, like I said, a win-win.
Yeah. Well, you've done a great job, sir.
And it's not me. I'm just a tiny little part of it. And again, it's one of those things in Huntsville. It's always been that collaborative, many people doing what they need to do and kind of putting community first, sometimes over and above their own financial or commercial interest, because very much the recognition that a rising tide, lifts all boats.
Right.
So
if you do not know the history of the Sydney Opera House in Australia, that is a great story of something where they had a huge desire, and I won't repeat this because I've mentioned on other podcasts or other episodes, but it almost bankrupted the city. They thought it was going to take $7 million in 3 years. It took $107 million in like 25 years. But the result after all of that, and I mean they kicked the guy out of the country that was the architect,
right?
Because he had designed something that was impossible. The technology had to be invented to do it.
Wow, yeah.
And he was like, "Well, it's just a design."
Yeah,
I didn't say it was possible.
Build it, yeah.
And they like, get out of our country, right? Yeah. I mean, it was bad, but at the end of the day, there are a few buildings that are that iconic,
exactly,
than the Sydney Opera House, right? And that was what they wanted.
And can you imagine Sydney without it? So.
And so, in a way, we if you don't know the backstory, and this is why I love this podcast, is here you're kind of, and we haven't even gotten into all the gory details of the Federal Highway Administration.
Oh God, you don't want to know.
And all the phases, but now we all benefit from. Oh wow, the ramps are almost done by next year, and it's going to be even easier to get in and out of Toyota Field.
Right.
But oh my goodness, there's probably been a lot of headaches along the way,
Of course.
and struggles and
Well,
whatever
and I'll tell you
to
this
make it a
too, and
reality.
that's one of the other things that you do see here with local governments. The easy answer for almost any question for a politician, a local politician, is no. Okay, because it's safe. Okay, we're going to build a minor league baseball stadium. No,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people don't necessarily vote on what they don't have. Okay, type of thing. You don't have to wonder if it's going to work or not. I mean, the safe is always no. So our guys have always been, willing to look at projects like the stadium, to look at making investments in road infrastructure. When we do things differently here on incentivizing and getting roads built than any other community in Alabama. So our guys are willing to do that. Other cities would never think of doing it. So, from that kind of thing to investments in Research Park to building generals houses on Redstone to be more competitive for BRAC, our community has always been willing to kind of step up and go do some things that other communities, typically just either say that's not our job, or other politicians say, "Well, that sounds like something that somebody might get mad at eventually." So I think I'm just going to vote no. So we've always had those folks willing to get out there and do that, and that's again what's really helped us.
If you don't mind, so I know we don't talk politics. However, I think this is kind of a safe thing to get your opinion on, because you are the head of Dale's Congressman Strong's transition team, and I know he and Senator Britt have come out pretty strong on this Space Command.
Sure.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Is it? Are they going to listen to Senator Britt? Was pretty clear, right, to the defense, the SecDef,
Right.
on remove the politics from this.
Right.
You did a study. We finished number one in just about every category.
Right.
Space Force, Space Command should be in Huntsville, Alabama.
Right. Absolutely.
What's your comment on
Well,
that?
again, we went, I was, very much a fringe participant, working at that time in the congressional office for then Congressman Bud Kramer. 2 different BRAC rounds. And BRAC is the Base Realignment and Closure Commission. When the military decided several years ago they needed to eliminate bases, the hardest thing in the world for the military to do is to eliminate a base, because nobody wants their base eliminated.
Sure.
You can make the case for any base of all the why you must keep it open. So they established a BRAC commission, and then they established criteria that they had to go and evaluate and rate things on in order to bring facts and statistics into it. And then people that weren't part of the military in a lot of cases, because sometimes the military is, there's politics within the United States military as well.
Yeah.
So you wanted to take both the military kind of politics out of it, and you wanted to take the politicians out of it, and make decisions that were based on what really made sense fiscally and for national defense. And they closed a lot of bases, and we were a beneficiary of that for a variety of reasons. But they've kind of gone away from that. And so, again, when you got to the Space Command headquarters, a decision, they kind of said, okay, we need to, again, let's get the politics out of it. Let's look at these criteria. We're going to rate all of these cities. They originally did a one ranking, and then other cities said, hey, wait a minute, you didn't give us an opportunity. So they opened it up, said, okay, anybody that wants to submit can. They narrowed it down to 5, and then went through all the criteria again, and we won. So now we're trying to bring kind of more of the politics into it, which has always been the problem with these kinds of decisions. And, we're pushing very hard. And I think eventually that argument is too hard to get away from as far as the facts, okay? The rankings, the looking at all the different elements of what you need to bring that here. The case is just too overwhelming for it to not happen in some capacity. So I do believe that, that you're going to see some of that. I think you're going to see members of Congress that aren't necessarily involved with it to this point start to get involved, because again, if this is what we're going to grade things on, and if this is the process, we need to follow the process. And if you're going to come in and up in the process because you didn't like the answer, well, that means you might do that to my project next year. Okay. So if we've all agreed on this process, we all need to stay with the process. So I believe over time that we're going to win out on that.
It's interesting. It's interesting how the politics continues. So then I had a friend who came back from D.C., and they had been up there to see the promotion of a friend that was going to be a general.
Right.
And it didn't happen.
Right.
because Senator Tuberville had blocked it,
Right,
and it's
right.
like, oh man, it just keeps cascading.
Yeah.
The effects of these types of decisions,
Right.
and then the politics that go into like affecting something, like,
Right, right.
someone's promotion.
Yeah.
And I forget about those things a lot.
Right, it happens, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and again, we've and I've always said that, and we've benefited on our contracting community for the same reasons. It's,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, one, the quality of life of this community is second to none. You can do things here as a business or as a government more cheaply and cost effectively as you can in a lot of other communities in this country. And you can get the talent that you need, the technological talent. So those things together mean we're going to keep attracting more jobs and more companies and more DoD missions and roles and NASA missions, because it's just hard to replicate that anywhere else. So, yeah, the future is bright on that. Whether it's Space Command or others, at the end of the day, they're going to have to be here in some capacity or another, because this is where the technical talent is, and this is where the technical talent wants to be. So they'll have to follow that. That's what happens. So
I know I've mentioned Chad a few times, but about a year ago today, he was sitting where you're sitting, and we had just found out that Huntsville was the #1 place to live.
Right.
And he had mentioned that air quality was a new measure that had moved us from, I think we were at 4 or 3 before, and moved into the #1 spot.
Right.
Because Denver, with all the fires and stuff out west, the air quality has been, diminished some. But I'm just wondering. You don't have to comment, but I'm like, well, I wonder if Green Bay slid into the #1 slot just as another slight to us.
Yeah.
Related to the politics and well, let's make them #2 and knock them off their perch.
Number 2 is not bad. Okay. If you want to be that's a first world problem when you're upset that you're the #2 best place to live in the United States over, I don't know how many thousands of communities, but I did think, I was kind of thinking about it even when I did the Facebook post. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Surely this is going to put us back to #1. I mean, if we can sell out
sure,
all these venues in the same night, come on, man. I mean, did you have soccer in that formula? Maybe they didn't have soccer. They probably need to go back and look at it again.
Maybe they're just trying to appease since Aaron Rodgers is now a Jet.
Yeah.
Just to make the Green Bay happy about something.
Yeah, well, again,
collectively sad.
Try to get the players not quite as upset to move there. So, but hey, my son is a stockholder in the Green Bay Packers.
Is he?
So so anything that happens good for Green Bay, I guess it's probably to provide that that disclosure that that I may be trying to influence the stock price of the Green Bay Packers. But
let's talk about your boys if you don't mind, real
Sure.
quick. I actually have a picture. I have a few pictures I'm going to show you, but I think I should probably show this now. And this is just a cool shot of these youngsters.
Yep.
Right there.
There you go.
And this is from your Facebook page.
Yep.
So it's something that you posted.
Sure.
I'm assuming they're about 2 years old or so at this.
Yep. And for those of you out there that don't know this, these are triplets. So these guys were all born at the same time. So kind of a genetic and sociology experiment, gone live. So, so it's been fun for 22 years. So.
Yeah. So how surprised were you when you found out that news?
Oh, about triplets?
Yeah.
I tell everybody they don't really ever tell you that you're going to have triplets. As a lot of it is like the whole, the frog in the pot of water, If they told you had triplets, you'd probably just, lose it. So they just kind of keep easing you into it. It's like, there's a chance that it might be more than one. Well, there's this, and don't get excited, and then finally, hey, you're having 3, So you've kind of, I guess, worked up to being used to it. So
did you hear the sonogram? Did you hear 3 heartbeats and everything?
Eventually you do.
Yeah.
Eventually. But, by that point, that's when you do say, okay, that's it. But, there was a lot of different other markers ahead of that, of different hormone levels and such that were elevated and such to lead them to believe there was more than one. And then it was, okay, there's more than 2. So we knew there couldn't be more than 3, but, so that was the only good thing. So
were they all born healthy?
I mean, in the grading on a scale of multiple births, yes.
Okay.
They all made it right around. I guess it's 32 weeks. It's kind of a magic point. One had to have a little bit of an intubation as far as from oxygen. One had a hood, but they were all 3.5 to 4 pounds. So, and it was funny to me because we were in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care at Huntsville Hospital, which is all the the babies that are kind of born premature and are having issues. And in there they looked big. I mean, there's babies there that break your heart that are even much smaller than that. And then I would kind of, in my walk around the hospital, I'd go by what they called the well baby nursery, with the rest of the babies, and I'd look in there and go, oh my gosh, these look like monsters.
Yeah.
It's 11 pounds. Oh my God. So, but no, they were healthy. Had really no health issues growing up. So we were blessed.
So they just had to stay in the hospital just to get their strength.
Yeah, just to kind of get up. They want you to be up over, I think, 5.5 pounds.
Right.
So really, it was just kind of that. And as they all got a little stronger and such, they all kind of lost any supplemental oxygen and things like that. So did
they stagger? Like one came home first, and then the next
no,
one came
we kind
home?
of they let us do all three at the same time. I want to
Okay.
say. I guess it was probably Jonathan. I think it was a little under what they liked to have him at, but it was like, well, his brothers are going, so let's just do the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it worked out very well for us.
Well, that's got to be amazing. I know that I don't know how it was when they were born, but like my sister had twins, for example.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, she's in this twins group.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think she had to pay for anything. Diapers. I mean, it's almost like if you're having triplets, correct me if I'm wrong, the community bands together.
Oh yeah.
Well, and you probably got a lot of free stuff.
Well, not necessarily. Again, it's what you really don't. It's not free stuff that you need. You need somebody to help. 'Cause,
Yeah,
you kind of have this. Hey, I'm. If you wash your hands, let me get you a background check before you come in here. You got three in there, and it's like joggers running by. Hey, you want to come in and hold a baby for a little while? Come on in here. So, Lisa, my wife, the mother. Her mother kind of moved back here from Memphis. My parents lived here. They were just, they had 4 kids and were just at that time just completely frustrated. Nobody had grandkids yet. So the fact they had 3 at the same time, they were very happy. But with that, we were at First Baptist Church. They organized church ladies that would come in on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons just to, what they said, hold babies. We're not here to do the hard stuff. We just want to hold babies. So, and that was wonderful. And which is funny because the kids will still be somewheres in town and run into some, nice old lady and she'll say, I held you when I was, when you were a baby. So they still remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is one of those things as far as taking a village. It does take a village.
Now, what were you doing professionally at the time?
Well, at that time, when they were right before they were born, I was working for Congressman Bud Kramer at the time. I was in his district office here and had been for several years. So when you have 3 kids coming, you start looking at that government salary and say, yeah, I really like this job, but it's a lot of formula to buy, and at some point, all 3 of these kids are going to college. So about that same time, I left and kind of started a consulting business and did business development, marketing, communications for a lot of different companies and entities in and around Huntsville. So did a lot of that and was blessed to have a kind of a wide range of client base, which coming out of the congressional office where you work a little bit on a lot of things, that was appealing to me, and it was a lot of fun.
So you started that before they were born?
Yeah, actually, I think my exit interview was like the day that Lisa went into the hospital.
I see.
Kind of on preterm labor, and then because she was in there another 6 weeks before we actually gave birth. So it's like, okay, maybe was this the right decision? But it was. It worked out very well. And
so you find out you're having triplets, and then that's when you're like, okay, I've got to really evaluate
time
this.
Time to look at what's the next step. So
fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they all went on to run. They were runners and stuff, right?
Yep. They did a little bit of everything. Of course, they did the soccer. Growing up, you want to expose them to as much as you can. They all played football, park football. I want to say 2 out of 3 maybe played like their freshman year of football. They played middle school. And Nick was kind of the first to start running in 8th grade. And Nick was just always a runner. It was strange. Okay, you'd go do these fun runs. I would do the 5K, and kids would want to do the fun runs, and and I guess they were probably, I don't know, it must have been 7, 8 years old at the time, 8, 9 maybe, and Daniel and Jonathan did what little kids do. They run real fast for about 100 yards, and then they walk, and then they run real fast. Nick just took off and just never stopped, and
And he's I have a picture of them real quick.
Yeah.
Is he one on the far left?
No, he's
Nick?
the one in the middle. Yeah.
Nick's in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he just always liked to run, and he just didn't stop. So we went. I remember the first 5K he did because it was, again, he's probably young to do it. And I said, well, you can do the 5K with me. And so we get there and we're in lining up to do the 5K. And he says, why are we back here at the back? And I said, well, I'm not the fastest runner, so I kind of let the fast guys go, first. And he's like, is it okay if I go up towards the front? And I was like, go ahead, and I just told him, I said, look, run until you don't want to run anymore. Right. I said, just kind of sit down on the side of the road or whatever.
And wait for me.
Wait for me. I'll be by, and of course it was, there's a lot of marshals on the course and such. And he was at that point was probably seventh grade, sixth. No, it wasn't middle school.
Is that
yet.
this picture?
So, yeah, fifth grade.
The color
no,
one?
No.
That's a different one?
Later. Yeah.
Okay.
That was later.
All right.
But anyway, so sure enough, I run my race, and I'd say probably a half a mile, between a half mile and a mile to the finish line. There's Nick. I see him he's walking around looking for me, So I said, okay, come on, let's go. And so he finished the race with me. And I said, well, what was your time? And I looked at mine. And I said, well, your time was this. So he goes, no, he said, I already finished. I came back looking for you. Okay. So he won his age group, and actually ran the first Hudson Alpha does a run out there, kind of on that double helix run. He won the first one of those.
Wow.
So, but it's just something he just always loved to do. So, and so the other boys kind of came into it. Jonathan ran a lot, did competitive cross country. Daniel ran some. He was not much of a runner, so he ended up doing kind of throws. He did the javelin and such. So it was a lot of fun. But Nick was very fast. Jonathan was fast too. Jonathan just thrived on the team aspect of it.
Yeah.
He did not like to run. I mean, he said, Dad, once we get through this and, after the state championship and we ran at Nike up in North Carolina, he says, you'll never see me run again. Okay.
I've been to that one.
Oh, Nike?
It's in Cary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We did that twice. Yeah.
You know what? So let me come back to that, but I need you to tell me about this finish because this is the, I guess, the state meet. Yep. If you can see that.
Okay.
Let me make it a little bigger.
There you go.
And he finishes fourth. And this is a mile.
Right.
And I look at those splits. So it's like a photo finish. Jackson Thomas from Grissom runs it at 4:24.
Yeah.
But then 23 tenths of a second later, whatever, is Thomas Wolf.
Yeah.
And Nick, I mean, it's only less than a second.
Yeah. But it happens a lot in track.
Do you remember them
track?
Like coming to the end like thoroughbreds? I mean, it's just an all-out sprint.
Not this one specifically. So because that must have been fairly early. Because I'm looking at Thomas Jackson. I know he was Cameron Cox is down there. So Cameron was 2 years ahead of Nick. So this must have been when Nick was
this is 2016,
maybe. Yeah. He graduated in 2019. So this was early in his career. So these are seniors that he's up there, beating and running amongst there too. So
that was an amazing finish.
Oh yeah, he had several of those. I mean, it was some of these races these guys did was truly impressive and incredible. So but
actually, and I think this is the when they won the state championship.
The state championship.
There it is, right?
First one for the boys at Huntsville High School in a long time. But and they've won, I think, 3 since then. So
really,
yeah, kind of kicked off a really great program there at Huntsville High School.
So how long ago was it that you were in Cary for the Nike stuff?
Well, let's think. Nick graduated in 2019, so we went in 2019 and 2018. I don't think we went in 17. I know we did. I think we did 2. I think we did those 2. Maybe in 3. I have to go back and remember.
So my son, he's my I have 4 kids. Is my second boy. He's the third, right? Mm-hmm. And he wasn't the best runner, but he socially it was his friends.
That's Jonathan.
They liked having him around.
Yeah.
And I've told this story once. This is a test to see if my wife will listen to this episode.
Yeah.
And because I haven't really told her that this happened.
Yeah.
But he gets there, and of course most of these guys are running not as fast as your son.
Yeah.
But they're running 450. 5-minute pace, and this was a 5K. You know how it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. And at the end they come up that long. It's just that gradual incline to the finish, and they kind of run on that Bermuda grass, I guess, when they leave, but when they come back, they're up on that trail.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you can visualize the finish, and I think the last 100 yards they kind of turn, and then and it just goes. It's just a straight shot to the finish. Mm-hmm. So I was like, "What's your PR, Jason?" He's like, "Oh, I've never gotten better than 21 minutes." I was like, "You know what? if you break 20 minutes, if you get 19 anything, even if it's 1959, I'll give you $500 cash. And he was like, really?
Yeah.
And so when we went to like dinner, the team dinner that night, that's all. No one was really talking about the other guys and how well they were going to do. They were just they excited to like pump him up to say, hey, you can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought my money was safe. So I'm watching.
Yeah, because that's a big jump. That's
It's
a big
huge
jump,
jump.
And that's not an easy course either. It's not a fast course.
And I was like, I'm gonna make them, earn this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all wearing pink shorts. There's like this whole bit. And so I see him, he's somewhat towards the end of the pack. He's coming up, and I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be close. Sure enough, he finished at 1954.
Oh wow, yeah.
And we went right to the ATM.
Yeah.
Like,
Give me the cash,
I
Dad.
said, here's
Yeah.
your cash, man.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? Is that what it takes to get more out of you?
Yeah,
Just a
yeah.
little, a little incentive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I learned too because runners are different. I mean, it's kind of this almost like a kind of California surfer kind of thing, but also competitive. So it's this strange mix of again in running in those kind of finishes, you've got to be competitive. But then they're all again much more laid back than other athletes and other competitive pursuits that I've been to. So it really is kind of a unique mindset. So.
I'm still amazed at how do you really? I mean, I think some of it's just genetic, but how do you make these guys faster?
Well, that's two things I'll say. One, like I said at the beginning, this was kind of a genetic and sociology experiment because again, I've got 3 boys. They were all born at the exact same time. They were all raised the exact same. It wasn't, okay, we changed the way we did potty training with this, or we let this guy do this, and we didn't let they were all, and physically, they are all very different from each other, socially very different, academically, athletically. So, a lot of it is, one, not only just kind of born with, these talents and such, but really even how they develop, So, sometimes you almost sit there and say, well, wait a minute, am I having any impact at all on this, kind of thing, So,
Right.
But I'll tell you too is the competitive running in Alabama since Nick graduated in 2019 has just gone off the charts. Nick held about every Huntsville High record in any kind of a distance when he graduated in 2019, and most of the records in the top 10 were from the 80s and 90s. He's not in the top 10 anymore.
They've all been
any
broken?
of those at Huntsville High School. Yeah,
Really?
Nick he won came in second, I think, in the mile in the state championship behind this guy named Ethan Strand. That's probably, at that time, I didn't think anybody could be faster than Ethan Strand. And he said, this year, he said, Dad, I wouldn't have finished in the top 10 at the state meet. So it's gotten that much faster with these guys. So.
Wow. So let's talk a little about you, and in particular, I'm curious about one thing. I know you grew up. Well, you were born in Dover, New Jersey.
Right.
You spent some time in Rome, New York.
Well, my family is all from Rome, New York.
Right.
And my dad worked at Griffiths Air Force Base. They kind of moved his job to Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey. So we lived in New Jersey long enough for the kids to be born.
Okay.
And then they moved us to Huntsville. So
Gotcha.
So I moved. I turned 5. In the hotel. Here waiting for us to be able to move into our house.
Oh, really?
In Huntsville. So, so no real tie to New Jersey. Family is all in
Sure.
upstate New York, Rome area.
Right.
But, we were just there long enough to be born in New Jersey. So
And he came down to the Arsenal?
came down to the Arsenal. It's been 1973, and it's a lot different than it was in 1973. My dad is 100% Italian. He didn't speak any English until the first grade.
Yeah.
And so he gets to Alabama and, goes to the Piggly Wiggly and he says, where's the Italian sausage? And they look at him and they say,
What are you talking about?
We got Jimmy Dean hot and we got Jimmy Dean mild. Which one you want? So it was a little different town than it was then. But, but he loved it. Dad he worked for the government chemical engineer for close to 40 years, and just the technical aspects and challenges of what the community was doing, what he could do as an engineer here was really what kind of kept him here the whole time. And then just at that time, again, it's not the same community there was, but it's just a great place to raise a family, you know. So.
And he passed in 2020?
Yeah, he was right at the beginning of COVID. Yeah.
Okay.
So
did he die from COVID?
he did.
He did.
Yeah. Well, again, he died of COVID. He kind of thought, well, hey, this is going to take me out, and if I get it, and I'm probably going to get it.
Yeah.
You know, but he's at that age, he was almost 90, and he had like the last 3 winters had kind of bouts with pneumonia and had been hospitalized, and he was in a nursing home, so he pretty much knew, hey, if this this thing gets here, I'll be out of here, But he said, it actually probably makes a better story than saying Dad died of pneumonia, So, but so yeah, he was. He was ready to go at that time. So
you had a good relationship with him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was a lot older than me. He was well, of course he was always older than me, but he was 36, I think, when he got married. So so he was one of the older dads at that time, especially. Today people seem to have kids at all ages, but but he was he had kids much later in life than most people at that time.
So. Why did you go to Tulane in your first year of college?
It was one of those. I guess hey, it was a brand name, and I had 2 friends that I went to high school with that went to Tulane. They were close friends of mine. I got accepted. Dad was, of course, very. Dad was the first in his family to go to college. So he just pushed you. Of course, you have to go to college. You have to go to college, and he'd say, "I'll send you to the best school you can get in." So I got into Tulane, and I went. So I was there for a year. It was a lot of money. I was on some financial aid. They upped my financial aid and scholarship for the second year, almost as much as they increased the tuition. So at the time, my sister was here at UAH, and she was going to UAH and studying political science, which is what I was studying. And I'd come home on breaks, and we're kind of doing all the same stuff, So I'm thinking, golly, is it really worth spending all that money, Because, my dad was, I knew he was having to borrow and do things. So I thought, I'm not sure this is a great use. And then the other was, I kind of at that time had kind of decided I really wanted to kind of get involved in government, And at that time I was planning to go to law school.
Okay.
And so, even my professors at Tulane said, unless you're going to live here, especially being Louisiana and New Orleans, you probably want to go, study in the state to where you're going to feel like you're going to practice and want to do these things.
Right.
So it made sense for me to come back to Alabama, and UH at the time was here. My mother was working there. My sister kind of introduced me to some of the professors. There were a couple of great guys. So I just kind of decided I'll just go and do that. And really have never regretted it now. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, what every year I think of the NCAAs, not that this is your case, but if a team does really well, their enrollment goes up.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter who it is.
No question. Yeah.
And now, of courch, the Google searching is going to go up. Who is Florida Gulf Coast? I remember when they were in the tournament and did real well. Or George Mason, that was my alum.
Yeah.
They went to the Final Four one year. But just the impact of friends, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's, hey, maybe I want to get away from the family. I want to get away from Alabama. My dad's going to support me.
And that was an element of it too. I mean, again, like I said, when I graduated high school, everybody wanted to go. I mean, let's get out of here.
Sure.
That kind of thing. The idea of going to UAH would be, it was crazy. We don't want to stay here. And it wasn't anything bad about UAH. It was just it was here. So. But again, I was looked at it, and I had good friends that did stay here, and some were at UAH and some were just working. So again, it was okay, if I'm going to come back, this is where I want to end up. So why not just come all the way back rather than go to Tuscaloosa or something like that?
How is Metairie, Louisiana?
Well, it was in New Orleans.
That's in New Orleans? I thought Tulane was in Metairie.
No, they're in, uptown New Orleans. I mean, you were a streetcar right away from the French Quarter. Yeah,
okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, and it was an interesting place to live, for sure. Mm-hmm. I tell people I love New Orleans. It's a great place to visit, but I would not want to live there. So,
right.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So.
I was just in St. Louis. I couldn't live there.
Yeah, yeah.
If I came out alive.
Yeah,
it was scary just going to get gas.
Right.
Somewhere,
Well, it was, Tulane was one of the, and this is kind of the way New Orleans is. It's just so, you walked off one side of campus and it was Audubon Park and one of the nicest areas and, most expensive homes in the state of Louisiana. And if you walked off the back of campus, and it wasn't a big campus, it was a very dangerous place, Yeah. So it was just one of those, you could just turn a corner and the nature of where you were changed very quickly.
Yeah.
And at that time, the quarter had not kind of developed as kind of commercialized as much as it is now. Mm-hmm. And it just, and I used to tell people too, it was, French Quarter was fun after a football game or when there was a big crowd. But man, you go down there on a Wednesday night or something, it was a spooky place,
Sure.
So.
And then what do you think caused you to have such interest in political science?
Well, again, I just early on started working in political campaigns. It was a friend of mine in high school. Her mother was a city council woman. She was running for mayor. And so I wasn't even able to drive yet. Somebody had to give me a ride over there, and I'd help make campaign signs. And at that time, you made campaign signs by painting on plywood, So so I was painting, campaign signs and such. So it's just something that always appealed to me, So as far as that kind of thing, politics and government, and so obviously that's why I kind of did the political science.
So you were campaigning for others, and then sometimes your own campaign. Did you run for office?
No, I never ran for office.
Did?
Yeah, I ran for student government, but at UAH. But no, I've never run for office and never really entertained the idea of running for office.
Yeah, I think you were. Were you like the treasurer at UAH and the SGA?
I was. Yeah, treasurer, and I think then maybe I did a stint as vice president. So yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. Yeah, it was interesting. And it was a way to get involved and trying to help. We did some things I think that kind of helped start to build the university into a little bit more of a traditional university. Some of the first dorms and campus housing was built during that time. So
yeah, and it's amazing to see how that's grown, right?
Oh,
UAH.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's impressive. So
and now you got, is it Chuck Carr? Is he the president now?
Yes. Yeah.
He came up from Tuscaloosa.
Fantastic guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I've seen good presidents and I've seen bad presidents. So
I bet
it's been interesting over the years to get guys in and out. And again, you want to talk about watching how much of a difference leadership can make on something. Have a bad president of a university for a few years.
Oh yeah, sure.
It can really, really set you back. And you can just, when you get somebody good and dynamic and energetic, you look up 5 years later and like, how in the world we get all this done? So somebody like him is, really going to be a great thing for the university. So
it's amazing how much that's true in so many aspects, right? Just
Yeah.
the people at the top.
Absolutely.
Whatever,
Yeah.
and
if you really think okay, elections don't matter, and that kind of thing, they do. I mean, who's leading you, and the tremendous impact that those people close to home have. A lot of people just don't vote in local elections, because they feel like it just doesn't affect them. Like even we hear it a lot, kind of Research Park. I don't care who the governor is. I want to know who's going to be in charge in Washington. I work for the Department of Defense. I need to know what the, no, it's important who your governor is. It's important, more important actually, who your mayor is, who your your county commission chairman is, because they're going to make most of the decisions that affect you day to day.
Yeah. So have any of your boys have they taken interest in politics?
Yes, Daniel has. Daniel, even when he was in high school, he managed to somehow convince somebody to let him do an internship and kind of got involved in some political campaigns, worked for a friend of mine that was in the business at that time, Heather Wilson. So he did that then and has kind of continued to do that over the years. So when Kevin Turner ran for sheriff here a few years ago, if you saw a Kevin Turner sign somewhere, Daniel probably put it up.
Really?
And Frank Barker, yeah. And unfortunately, he was also the one who had to go take them all down. So so he's been involved in it for a while. So
okay. And then what are your other boys' interests?
Well, Nick wants to do real estate, so he's still quite narrowed down what he wants to do in real estate. So he's going to kind of come work with us and kind of just see a wide variety of things and try to decide on his own kind of what he wants to do in real estate and development. So and Jonathan is he's going to be a banker. So
okay,
so he's did that for a summer job and was offered a job here at a local bank and took it. So he's looking forward to that.
That is amazing when you think about it. They share DNA, right? They're triplets, and yet in a way they are different, and couldn't be more different.
Yeah,
right?
And again, like I said, I tell people even like academically. Okay, Daniel was one of these kids that could not go to bed unless every bit of his homework was done, and he had studied and all this kind of just the most conscientious student. Nick didn't quite, it wasn't that he was not going to do it. It just never really registered with him, So you'd have these conversations as a parent, every evening at the dinner table. Okay, what homework does everybody have? Daniel would tell me what homework he has, and you'd run to Nick and say, I really don't have any homework. And Daniel, not wanting to rat on his brother, wouldn't rat on him directly. It'd be like later on, he's like, "Oh, Dad, because I'd be helping him with some homework that he had." He's like, now, Nick is in the same class with me too, right? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Nick, don't you have to do this? Oh, yeah, you're right. I do, So, so it was just different,
Yeah.
So they all did very well at Alabama, but just just different personalities. So, and again, even on the running, I mean, I'm not sure Daniel could run a mile right now. Yeah, I mean Nick run 100 miles in a week. So so again, just to act, socially, just very very different. So we used to tell the story when they went to first grade and they got home, and my wife was asking them different things, and Jonathan's was always kind of the more social, and so. Okay, who's in your class? Did you make any friends? And Jonathan could tell you, every kid in the class's name, first and last name. You asked Daniel, and he knew about 10 boys' names. You asked Nick, and he's like, there was a kid, and I kind of talked to him some, and I like him a lot. What was his name? I don't know. So he was just kind of a little bit in his own world. So just very different, growing up. So
I don't know if I should bring this up, but so my son just graduated from James Clemens.
Yeah,
and we're at the graduation ceremony. Now, when I was in high school, and it was almost the same size graduating class, there was 490 in my graduating class in Virginia. We may have had a few kids that had a 4.0.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 20.
Yeah.
And then there's some AP stuff, but it was like topped out at 4.2, 4.3.
Right.
They had 20 kids stand up that had a 5.0.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, there might have been 100 kids who stood up that had a 4.0.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this. And I know, and being a parent, and when my kids seem to get a lot of chances to make up work.
Right.
Now, my chance was, you're not going to get a 0, Troy, because you didn't do the assignment, but we'll let you get at least a D+ if you do it.
Right. Yeah.
Not a full credit.
Exactly.
And I'm not, but you're the type, hey, I get tired of tiptoeing around things. Like, I kind of have an issue with this in the sense of like, I just find it to be like disproportionately, like statistically inaccurate.
Yeah.
That we have that many kids who have a 4.0.
Yeah. Well, plus, and again, the more than 4.0 is what just mystified me. The first time I was hearing about it, I'm like, okay, 4.0 is perfect. Like, oh yeah, he's got a 4.7. Like, what? How do you get 4.0?
AP classes and all
yeah,
that.
exactly. I mean, and I get that, but I had AP classes when I was in school, but everybody still the highest grade was still 4.0.
Right.
So you just took harder classes. So. And I get that. I guess the idea is you don't want to penalize the guy for taking hard classes, and getting a lesser of a GPA. But so I kind of understand that. But yeah, it is different. And I tell you what was kind of difficult, because at one time the Alabama Sports Festival, I was on the board, and we would have to evaluate scholarship applications for kids from I think my region was North Alabama, so it was probably 16 counties in North Alabama, and you'd get these applications and you're reading, and again, it's trying to, because some of the places have that and some don't, and so then you're trying to see, okay, if you're in Coleman County and you don't have this and you've got a 3.8, is that as good as or better than the guy that's got a 4.2? I mean, so it makes it hard to do some of those things. But
or I wonder how the colleges are dealing with that now. Like,
I have to say, at least in my experience in applying for colleges, that my kids applied to in the state of Alabama and others, they don't care what your grades are. I mean, it's all about the ACT score, and even if you look at the different scholarships that are available at Alabama, it's if your ACT score is this, you get this scholarship. And then it'll be like in the fine print, and have a GPA of greater than 3.5 or something like that. But it's not, it really is all about that score, and I think, and I guess part of that reason is it's almost impossible to, not only because of the 4.2, but that was something that you would see, and it kind of troubles you a little bit about the state of education in Alabama. You'd have some guys from some of these more rural high schools that don't have the resources that we have, and you could see they had done everything their school had asked them to do, and they got good grades, and they participated in all these different activities, and then their standardized scores on any kind of a test that were included were not very good,
right.
Which again really kind of breaks your heart, 'cause you're like, this kid learned everything these people taught him, but he's still not able to do work at maybe what would be a senior level student at other schools. So I think one of the reasons we make fun of universities for doing that, I don't think they have a choice. They really have to look at something that's somewhat standardized.
I tell you, my opinion and my thoughts towards university and college has really changed. Not that you should get a degree, and a lot of that is more. It's not necessarily just the end. It's the process.
Right.
It really weeds out. Like as a hiring manager, I'll look at a resume, and I want to see a 4-year degree because it tells me you put that was a priority in your life.
Right. You
and
accomplished something.
You accomplished something.
And it's not easy.
And the GPA further shows like that commitment to like you went to class, you studied.
Yeah.
Now we live in a world of, unfortunately, ChatGPT can probably write your paper, right? And,
Yeah,
and now it's
right.
up to the professors to know how much effort. But if you're learning and you're studying and you're learning these skills that are going to help you in life. But man, so many schools are just way overpriced, you know, and there's the whole thing on what they're learning, right? That can be a departure from the way you
Right.
raised your kids
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
ideology and all that kind of stuff. But then I remember I had this professor. I had an MBA from Old Dominion University, and this guy comes in, and it was like an adjunct professor, and he was a investment banker at like Goldman Sachs, and he's like, I don't even know why he's teaching the course, because he was like, well, he basically said none of you will ever make it in investment banking because you're not at Yale or Harvard.
Yeah.
Like, well, why are you even here, sir?
Right, exactly.
Then why
Yeah,
are you teaching
yeah,
us?
yeah.
So to a certain degree,
Yeah.
it kind of shows you like, okay, there are certain paths, whether that's medical or law, investment making, maybe where you're not gonna even get a chance
Yeah.
unless it comes from a certain institution. But that's a really small, and it affected me.
Yeah.
Like, it made me feel stupid and dumb and like, what am I doing?
Right.
Like, wait a minute. Now I've had a really good career because there's a whole bunch of other fields and industries where I got a chance to shine. And,
Right.
and guess what? I ended up managing people who went to Harvard and Yale.
Right. Absolutely.
And in many cases making more money than them. And it's like, well, I went through community college and up through the ranks and, and paid for it my whole way. And like,
Yeah.
and it's nice, also nice now on social media where you have a lot of people who can show you, hey, through hard work, I didn't go to college, but I'm doing this and I'm doing well. And, come follow my formula,
Right.
whatever it is. Right. So it doesn't mean it's for everybody, but man, that really irritated me when there's that. Well, how, sir, do I go to Harvard?
Right.
If I'm never going to qualify in a way to be a part of the endowment process, or it's just not, I wasn't born into the right family. Should I really be penalized?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is. It's a tough one. It's funny because my kids all had various different kind of business oriented degrees. So
Yeah.
the natural discussion comes to the MBA. Oh, should I get an MBA? And the answer I think kind of came down to some of the same things there. Okay, what is it you want to do? Now, if you want to go be the on the executive track for a Fortune 500 company, you probably
Yeah.
need to have an MBA.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
If you want to be one of the best local bankers in Huntsville, you probably don't need an MBA. And then there was a very good study that I saw that kind of came out around that time that kind of compared guys that got out of school and went and got a job versus the guys that did the other year or two to get the MBA. And where were they 5 years later? The guys that had come out and gone to school, gone immediately to work, were all almost to a man ahead of the guys with the MBA, because experience was greater than the value of having that 2 years head start and 2 years of experience was greater than the value of having that MBA. So so again, it was like, okay, why would you want to do that? So Nick, of course, that wants to do real estate, he was at one time seriously considering an MBA. And so he was asking, of course, if you're going to, in my household, if you want to know about how to be successful in real estate development, you go ask Louis Breland, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and it's like, hey, you think it'd be beneficial for, stick around and get an MBA? And, he looks at, I didn't go to college. What do you need an MBA for,
Yeah.
So, you might be the most educated guy in real estate if you get that, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, so again, I'm sure that there's, REITs and such that you're going to do that kind of a thing that you probably might be beneficial to have an MBA. But at some point there's it's just another another 3 letters after your name. So
Yeah.
and I do think you get some of that. Jonathan, at one point when he before he went to college, wanted to do kind of sports marketing, sports management. And so it's kind of hung up on, I got to go to a school that offers a sports marketing, sports management degree. And talking to people in the industry, from Trash Pandas and others, they're like, oh man, don't let him do that. Okay.
Really?
If you want to go get a degree after some specialization or something. But they said, one, a lot of that stuff is just marketing kind of stuff. It's just a regular marketing degree, and it's just a way to kind of get kids to go there. And maybe you take a class or two that has something that's related to sports, but all they're doing is taking a regular marketing class, and instead of the projects are all sports related rather than just, other related, kind of stuff. So,
right.
And the point that one of them made too was, and there's no job in sports marketing that you can't do or get with a marketing degree.
Right.
Okay. But if you have a sports marketing degree, you might find it harder to go get non-sports marketing, jobs.
Yeah.
Which was very true. So they actually had a friend that graduated and wanted to get involved in kind of construction, had a construction management with a couple companies. And so he was applying and he kept getting, turned down. And so, he asked me for help. I looked at his resume and he had a degree in hospitality management. And I said, what the heck, So these guys were looking at it and I said, you look at the classes he took, it was the same management classes that everybody that was applying for the job had. They just had a management degree and his was, I said, it's not dishonest for you to just not put the word hospitality on here, okay? Just say you got a management degree, okay?
That's true.
So if they ask you, did you specialize? Then sure. And within a month, he had a job, so, and doing very, very well. So it's, so in some ways, I think it, and in the course of 4 years at Alabama, Jonathan no longer wants to do sports marketing. So, thank gosh that we didn't say, oh, wait a minute, we need to go to the University of Georgia because, Alabama doesn't have a sports marketing degree. So, then, it would have been a whole different experience for him now saying, I really would just like to go be a banker, So I don't know if you can do that with a sports management degree.
Sure.
So
does it bother you at all? I mean, I would say it's safe to say you've had somewhat of a career in politics. Yeah, you work at Breland Companies.
Right.
But and this is something I love about Huntsville, just the number of people that I've met and I mentioned at the beginning, kind of the movers and shakers and the power players, but that comes from just being involved.
Right.
And being involved and spreading your talents across. But I'm, there's like, oh, there's these career politicians. Well, now we have people who have no experience in politics. So politics is, a lot of it's how you communicate, it's how you negotiate. There's these skills that I think that people don't realize. Okay, yeah, politics a lot of times gets a negative connotation, but at the same time, it is an art. It's a craft where there's a certain way that you go about, learning how to push an agenda, back off, compromise.
Right.
And I don't think people really realize it. Unfortunately, we're seeing that with a lot of the politicians who get elected in.
Sure.
And it's kind of a mockery in a way of the system, right? And or like, well, this is this career person. Like, yeah, okay, well, that's a career though.
Right.
And that's the whole point.
Well, and then the other thing is, I mean, you look at, again, we'll use Dale as an example, okay? Because I've known Dale. We went to college together.
Sure.
Okay? Dale has always wanted to serve his community, okay? Dale didn't say, I want to be president, okay? He didn't say, I want to be a congressman. He was at UAH, and we always thought he was a little crazy because he would say, I want to be the county commissioner for District 5. Not, I'd like to get involved in politics. I like government. It was, I want to be the county commissioner for District 5, which is where he grew up, where his family's from in Monrovia, Harvest area. And that's just what he wanted to do. And when you'd say why, and he could give you, man, we need to be doing more about parks, and we've got these 4 intersections that, that are dangerous. We're growing, and we need to spend more on doing that and not quite so much on other things. And so he just always wanted to do it, and that was the best place for him to go and serve his community.
And he did that, right?
And he did. And for 16 years, he did it and did a great job and loved it. And it, kind of became, the next job was chairman of the county commission. And when he talked about it, he said, and I tried to get him to run for county commission chairman before that. He's like, I don't want to do that. I want to, this is what I like to do. I want to do this, But it came to the time, and he said, I think that is kind of the best way I can serve, because I think there's some things we can do differently that, that it would benefit to be there. And so we did. So, and really, and I tell people this story too. Dale came to me 4 years ago. And he had just gotten back from Washington, D.C. He went up there with Tommy Battle. They had gotten Huntsville got an award of one of the best cities in the country for whatever. But they were up there. They got an award from the Department of Defense. And he got back, and he came in my office, and he sat down. And he said, look, politically, the logical next step for me is to run for Congress. He said, someday I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say, Joey, I want to run for Congress. You have got to tell me no. do not let me run for Congress. I don't like Washington, D.C. I don't want to live there. Okay. I don't want to work there. So when I come and sell you that, you have to make me, do not let me run for Congress. Well, 2 years later, he comes in and he says, I want to run for Congress. Well, you told me to say, okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah. But, but again, it was look at where our country is.
Yeah.
I've been sitting here complaining about it for the last 4 years. Now there's an opportunity for me to go do it. So, I feel like I need to, So if you're going to, complain about it, and you have the opportunity to do it and you think you can help, well, go do it, So he really, again, career politician, he's really not. It's one of those, that's what it takes to get that job. If you could just go apply to be the county commissioner, he'd just gone and applied, So, but that's what you have to do to get that job that you feel like is the best way you can serve your community. So, and a lot of people are like that, So, I mean, Tommy Battle is like, Tommy Battle is a horrible politician. Okay. He's a fantastic mayor, and that's just all he wanted to do is, I've got some ideas. And I mean, the man's the best mayor we've ever had. But if he ran for governor, he didn't go very well. Okay. Because he's not a politician. He didn't do a good job of running around the state and telling people what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And when the community said, oh, hey, how can we do what Huntsville has done? And he'd lay out how to do it. Like, man, that sounds really hard. Give us some easy answers. Well, there are no easy answers. So, Tommy's not a great politician. Fantastic mayor. So
interesting.
Yeah, right. So,
all right, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not going to go through the whole, but this is a question I like to ask, particularly as someone who's from here. Let's say it's a Friday night, and you're gonna be cruising down near the Von Braun. And they're like, just let something's just like leaving Probst Arena, right? So people are coming out, they're going into the streets, and you're driving.
Right.
It's a beautiful summer night. You've got all the windows down, and you're cranking something on the radio or your CD or actually, well, I'm dating myself, right?
Sure.
You're playing a song.
Right.
You got your buddies with you, whoever, or you're alone, and you really want everyone to hear what you're cranking. What song are you cranking?
Oh, probably "Beautiful Drug" by Zach Brown Band.
Okay.
Or something else. Yeah.
Beautiful Drug.
Yeah. I tell people my retirement, I want to go be a roadie for the Zach Brown Band. So,
do you?
So. Yeah.
I was going to pick a couple of Zach Brown bands.
Yeah. So
Zach Brown
well,
bands.
one, I like their music, but then the other thing too, Zach Brown loves to eat. So he actually does a lot of kind of he tries to combine the two sometimes at festivals and such. So.
Do you cook outdoors or indoors?
I say I cook outdoors and indoors, but that's the one thing. I have moved to a condo at Town Madison right there, and I've gotten to the point where I kind of like condo living. I thought walking the dog was going to be a problem, but that really doesn't bother me. The no grill is starting to bother me. So that's my boys are all they're moving into a house this weekend in Low Mill.
Oh, really?
And so I've kind of got my grills that are in storage. I'm like, well, let's build a little structure for you over here, and Dad might just come in and out the back gate, So so I'll be back grilling here soon. Just I might not, have to drive a little way. So
yeah, I was gonna say that earlier. Like I have a smoker, I have a griddle and a grill out back.
Yeah.
And most of the times when I buy a house now, it has to have a backyard.
Yeah. Right.
But at the same time, the next move is probably going to be a condo.
Yeah.
In a mixed use area downtown or something. I think I'm about ready for the lack of hassle with the single family home.
Yeah, and I did. I kind of moved into the condo because it was time to sell kind of kids got through college. It was I don't live this 5-bedroom house. It's ridiculous. You know? So but it was going to be a temporary. I'm going to move there while I decide what to build at Town Madison and what size kind of thing. But the more I'm there, the more I said, well, I'm not sure I need another spot. Other than the grill. So
yeah, gotcha. Well, Joey, look, see, an hour and 42 minutes have gone by.
Yeah,
did it feel like it?
No, not at all. Yeah.
You got any final thoughts? I know it's getting kind of late.
No. Again, I just I love your podcast because again, you could do 200 or 500 episodes in this town, and you still would not get through all of the people that are here that have helped make it what it is.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that's a little bit unique about this town is it is very participatory. Okay. If you want to get involved and make a difference, you can. And there's nobody keeping you out. And if you've got a better idea, everybody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
Tommy Battle is from Birmingham. He's not from here. Okay. A lot of southern cities, you could forget about running for mayor if you were, not go back 3 generations, Okay?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Paul Finley is from Kentucky, So this is a town, that just that kind of stuff just doesn't matter. And I won't even say because there's so many new people that moved in, it doesn't matter to the people that were here 45 and 50 years ago. They, kind of made the decision that this is the kind of town they want, and those kind of things just aren't as important to them. The new ideas is the good ideas, the people that want to roll up their sleeves and get to work. A friend of mine moved here from Alice, Texas. He was the CEO of Crestwood Medical Center, and he was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce like 3 years after he got here.
Really?
Which again, in Mobile, if you weren't born under the right magnolia bush, and your dad wasn't in the correct, Mardi Gras crew, you could forget about being the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, But hey, he jumped in, he got real involved, he had great ideas. They fast tracked him. Hey, do you want to be chairman? Yes. Okay. So so this is a town that there are those leaders everywhere, and those people that contribute to our community. And we're always looking for more. So if you're out there and you got a good idea, get involved. So.
It's funny you say that. When I was interviewing John Kovach, I was like, John, he hates Virginia just as much as I hate Maryland.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's from Howard County.
Right.
But yeah, I love the guy.
Yeah.
Because he's the perfect man to bring us the Singing River Trail.
Well, he's a very entertaining and energetic guy. But again, here's a guy that's a history professor at the University of Alabama in Huntsville.
Right.
And starts to say, I want to get involved in my community more. Goes and does some of the.
Yeah.
I think I was in leadership Huntsville with John. Mm-hmm. And and all of a sudden he's running the Liberty Learning Center, and then he moves to do this. I mean, if you want to get involved, and he's going to have a tremendous impact on our community in that one little piece. So. Again, like I said, you could do 500 of these and not run out of the John Kovach's
sure.
To do.
Let me mention one more thing
sure.
that I wanted to mention with you here, and that is, and some of this is, so yes, you were essentially born and raised here, right? You've been here a long time. You went to Huntsville High,
right?
UAH, right? You're and now you're Clift Farm, which let's talk about Clift Farm next time.
Yeah, sure.
I'd love to learn more about that family.
Yeah, very interesting project. Yeah.
But then, so, and then I don't know, I was telling somebody today, like, I don't know if it's just coming out of like a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I went through that in my 40s.
Sure.
And I didn't really know what that meant till like you're like going through it. And some of it's just how, raising kids and pressures and stresses and all that. But I feel like in a way I have no time. Like I want to limit the drama in my life.
Right.
Right. And just watching people that just get spun up in every HOA about the dumbest things or are taking sides on whether or not Madison should have a what was it, the city manager,
right?
Stuff like that, right? Like we don't need to be like go to war over this,
exactly,
right? And so it's the same thing comes up where it's like, wow, there's now the Joe Davis Stadium versus Toyota Field or Huntsville versus Madison. Now, me, I'm like I don't have time for that. Like,
right.
I am interested in the more I've done this show, North Alabama,
exactly.
And then you go to Alabama,
right.
And you keep going out. I've talked about like this tribalism of how we are as people, right? Like in the Olympics, we're all pro-America.
Exactly.
But as soon as it's East versus West, well, you take your sides. Or North versus South. Or Alabama versus Georgia, right? Like we're always at war with something that's, that we're competitive with. Right. High school boundaries.
Well, two points I'll make on that real quick. And one is... again, this is a town. I had the unique advantage of several years ago. I worked when Dale was running for chairman. I worked for his campaign. I worked for Tommy Battle when he was running for re-election for his campaign, and I worked for the then mayor of Madison, Troy Truloch, worked for his campaign. So I kind of worked that summer with all three of them. And the message I always give to anybody in local politics that's in those positions is, look, 98% of the things you guys are going to agree on, and it's going to be in everybody's interests, okay? And you need to work hard to work as a group to make those 98% of the... there's 2% of things you're going to disagree on, or that's good for Huntsville but not Madison, or it's competition between the two. And go fight real hard on those 2%, okay? Don't let the 2% that you disagree on go poison the 98% that you need to be working together on, and vice versa. Don't let the 98% lull you into not fighting for the 2% of things that you need to stand up and fight for. So I think our community has done a good job doing that. The point I tried to make too with the post over the people going, there's a guy named Hank Eisenberg. I don't know if you know Hank.
I do.
Hank needs to be on this show. If you haven't had him, he should be on the show. But he owned that SIP in downtown Huntsville. Okay, and Hank has got a business out in Research Park. It was kind of a hobby for him. He loves
Oh, that's the cigar
whiskey.
bar.
Yeah. So he owned SIP, and I was talking to him, and I was like, man, you got Stella's just open. You got this new bar that's going to be on top of that new hotel. You've got this coming. Aren't you starting to worry that, you're going to be kind of muscled out of business kind of thing? And he said, no. He said, what you don't understand is nobody comes to SIP. He said, they come downtown.
That's right.
And when they come here, they go here, and then they go there, and then they say, hey, I want to check that place out. It's the same thing when you look at Toyota Field. Right. When you look at Toyota Field, Joe Davis, Orion, people aren't coming to one of those. They're at this point, you start to create so much of a synergy that people come to Huntsville. Hey, what do you want to do this weekend? Hey, let's go to Huntsville. What's going on? I don't know. Look it up. Is there a soccer game? Is there this? Is there this?
Yeah.
That's what you end up with. Or again, people moving, hey, that kind of thing, benefits everybody. So really is a rising tide lifts all ships, but they don't have to be, they're not in competition with each other. They're very much because if you like sports and you like live sports, now you say, well, gosh, I've got hockey, I've got baseball, I've got soccer, and I imagine you'll have a lot of people that go to all three. I know I will.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's like, I think Ricky and I talked this in episode 1. I said, listen, I'm not a fan of like minor league baseball.
Right.
I love baseball. Mm-hmm. And I love the Los Angeles organization, but I'm not necessarily a diehard where, I like the players, of course.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's the fact that I get to go to baseball at a really nice stadium. I get to eat the hot dogs because that's what you do. That's what you, as a kid, you grow up doing. You get to hang out with your friends. There's suites and there's the party deck and there's all these things that make it like, that's a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then is Teodosio playing or Maitan? Maybe, and I get really excited when they get called up.
Right.
And then,
well, that was one of the statistics they shared with us in the minor league stadium when we were within the stadium was just that it's all about the experience and not really about first of all, you have no control over the product on the field. Your major league team might have just a bunch of awful players. They may have great players. So,
right.
But they said they did a survey of people leaving minor league ballparks after the game, and it was like some 60% of the people could not tell you who won the game. Okay. They were there for some other reason. They were having fun and they were doing this, Now, again, you'll still go to Toyota Field and you'll see that guy sitting over there and he's got the old fashioned scorebook where he's keeping score along and he's, coding in E1 to 7 to, this kind of stuff. I mean, those purists are there. And there's a couple guys I can name for you that, I mean, they can tell you just, who's coming up from A and who's moved up to AAA and, they follow the players like that. So,
well, it's the same thing.
So it's,
like,
again, something for everybody.
It'd be one thing if you're young and you're a groupie and you follow around Dave Matthews Band or the Zach Brown Band, right? But when you find out someone's coming to the amphitheater, cool.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go follow Stevie Nicks everywhere because they came here, right?
Yeah, I went to Stevie Nicks. I would never go to a Stevie Nicks concert if I was. I was like, hey, but hey, she's here and it's an event and it's a great venue,
Yeah.
And it was Halloween and it was a wonderful experience. I mean, where else would you want to be? And it's kind of the same thing for me living across the street from the park now. It's like, especially like tonight, a night like tonight, you're like, oh my God, I get to go sit outside and watch baseball and hang out and have a hot dog. I mean, why would you stay inside and watch Netflix?
What I would tell Hank too is if SIP was the only thing in downtown, people would actually stop going because it's too damn crowded.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Yeah.
So now that it spreads out, then it does open up to what you were discussing of it's a crawl type thing.
Yeah.
Let's go to SIP. Let's go check out this. Let's put, for all of us who want to invest back into the community and the small business, well, then you're going to frequent all of those places. Mm-hmm. I'm going to buy my stuff, my T-shirts I buy from Fow Wow. This actually I just got in St. Louis at a show.
Yeah.
I don't actually code,
right?
But I like funny T-shirts.
Yeah.
I wear a lot of Panda stuff,
yeah,
because I want to support them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Joey, man, it's been a pleasure having you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it.
Let's have you on again. There's so much more we can talk about.
All kinds of stuff happening, so we're always trying to keep in front of it.
Everybody wants to know where the next Chick-fil-A, because I think they're growing out of their space down there, and And then Wegmans may or may not come. That kind of stuff.
I haven't heard anything about Wegmans now. There's a new one coming into town, Hy-Vee. I know they're looking
Hy-Vee's
around.
coming?
Yeah, they're looking around. They just built a distribution center in Nashville. But Wegmans, so far it doesn't have the distribution network to kind of keep coming down. That's always that's always the restraining factor on those guys is distribution. So.
Did you have anything to do with Buc-ee's? Because that's the greatest thing.
No,
that's only 7 miles from here.
Yeah. But I mean, it was funny because of course I've worked in economic development, and and sometimes you tend to, when you want something, term anything to be economic development, and it was like they actually gave those guys incentives,
sure,
to do this.
They did.
And I thought, man, what developer has talked some city into giving incentives on a darn truck stop or
you get a brand new interchange
store? Yeah,
and you're the only business there until they build other stuff.
But I went and once you go see it, it's like, oh no, wait, this is economic. The tax impact on that thing is enormous, kind of thing. So it's interesting. But that's one of those things, that's kind of phenomenon that you don't understand it until you go see it.
Yeah. So. Well, hey, and I realized we're going to talk about Vegas next time. I want to, because I saw you saw a game at Allegiant Field.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, we'll save it all for the next time.
Okay.
All right, Joey, all the best.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.